Welcome to I Play, Therefore I Am. In our conversations with extraordinary games industry professionals, we discover their unique career stories, and we also find out about their personal development and philosophical journeys.
This podcast is a co-production of MediaNet Berlin-Brandenburg and Now Media, and brought to you fresh from the Games capital Berlin, as part of the program MediaNet Games International.
I'm Simon.
I'm Florian, and we will be your hosts for this program.
Gaming meets philosophy. I play, therefore I am. Hello, good morning, and welcome to another episode of I Play, Therefore I Am. With me, as always, is my co-host Florian. Hello, good day.
Hello, good day.
Good day, good day. And our guest today is Benedikt Oehmen, who had a very long and storied career at Blizzard. But when changes and layoffs shook that company, he found himself wanting to help his colleagues find new careers. He also decided then to start a new Game Plus, as I would call it, a sort of leveled up career, new career for himself. And he wrote a book and started a coaching and leadership training business, all centered around his big three maxims. Be kind, be present, be open. Welcome to the show, Benedikt.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me, and thank you very much for this succinct and accurate depiction of my life thus far.
Yes, that's nice. We had the pleasure to talk a lot with each other recently, and it's been a great pleasure getting to know you. There's this,
same.
Yes, thank you. There's this quote that somebody said about you, that the mind of a scientist and the heart of a wizard. Also very complimentary. I would agree. And yeah, we thought, well, I'm very much looking forward to talking to you, because I think we were coming at the same thing from slightly different angles, but with the same goal. And this is a podcast with a bit of a philosophical and spirited slant, so we can see where that takes us today. We thought we could maybe start with just a bit of an overview over your career, because this is also a games industry and career podcast. So I told your story very succinctly. Maybe you could expand on it a little bit.
Sure, of course. So my career started with Blizzard Entertainment in 2005. At this point, I was actually a physics student in Heidelberg, Germany, and I had just done my bachelor's degree after 4 years of studies. And I asked myself, what do I actually want to do with this in my life? Like, what kind of job do I want to go after? And nothing really came to mind that really excited me. But one thing I was always excited about was games, and in particular collaborative games, like collaborative role-playing games, board games, card games, but also more recently, World of Warcraft, online role-playing games. And in that scenario, my brother, who was studying with me at the time in Heidelberg, made me aware of, like, hey, Blizzard is looking for game masters in Vélizy, France. And I was like, ooh, that sounds cool. So I thought, like, why not take off one semester, so half a year, to see what a quote-unquote real job looks like. And I applied for the position of game master with Blizzard Entertainment. And at that point, I think there were few people in the community who knew more about the lore and the game than me at that point, because I loved Warcraft, the games that came out before, and I bought every Blizzard game sight unseen, because I knew it's from Blizzard, it's going to be awesome, it's going to be genre defining. And that's the spirit. Was like, yes, I want to work for Blizzard, and helping people like enjoy the game and be the linchpin between the community and the company was all very, very exciting to me. So I applied. They invited me to an interview to Vélizy the next week, basically. And they said, yep, awesome. When can you start? And they're like, yes, whenever you want me. And then very short notice in 2005, in October, then I moved to Vélizy, France to start my adventures with Blizzard, to the surprise of everyone, because I never learned one word of French in my life before. actually was quite vocal about not liking France very much.
Wait, towards them or in your personal life before?
In my personal life, yeah, not in the interview. No. In my personal life, because I had Latin and English in school for some reason, Latin, right, and not French. But then, very short notice, to surprise of my whole family and all my friends, I relocated to France. And there, after half a year of doing customer support, so being a game master for World of Warcraft, I had the opportunity to switch to the community team and communications and become the first German community manager for World of Warcraft. And at that point, I said, okay, cool, let's take another semester, so another half a year to see how that goes. And that half year turns then into 17 years in the end. And I never looked back. And so yeah, during that time frame, then I really enjoyed being that linchpin, like between the community and the developers, providing feedback back and forth, sentiment reports, communicating with the community at large, going to events like Gamescom and smaller events all over Europe, online events, offline events, everything. And during that time, then I naturally kind of developed more into a senior expert role where I helped onboard new community managers for different languages, and then later on for different games and franchises, as well as we kept adding on additional games like StarCraft 2, Diablo 3, Heroes of the Storm, Overwatch, Hearthstone, and all the good games that came with the years. And at some point then in 2012, I transitioned to become a manager of community managers for the European market for 7 languages. For, I think back in the day, it was World of Warcraft and Hearthstone. And then structure changed and became Hearthstone and Diablo towards the end. Yeah, I learned a lot during that time because I first thought, like, hey, what I did worked so well. Let's teach the exact same thing to everybody else. It can only succeed, right? And of course, it was a terrible, terrible idea because everybody is a unique individual. And I needed to learn the hard way that I needed to give people space to express themselves and find their own way and take on more of a supportive role instead of a micromanagerial approach that I kind of had at the beginning. And that developed very well until the point, when was it now? When the first announcement was made, I think in 2018, that Blizzard would reduce our staff by 30% in the Versailles office, which was a big shock. Because for many of us, like myself included, Blizzard was their first real job, and they had it for 10 plus years at that point. And it really felt like a second family. And people you saw at work, you saw after work in the bars and in games, like that's the people you hang out with in your free time as well as during work time. And they basically become your entire life in this little language island within the borders of France, because we all spoke English or German with one another. And then you had very little outside contact with the rest of the French actual world around you. So when the announcement was made, there was a shock because we always like, hey, we always did so well. Well, like what's happening? What's going on? And then it took about a year for that announcement to be implemented, as Blizzard also gave opportunity to people to leave voluntarily during a specific period of time, so that they had to force out as few people as possible. But during that time frame, we lost a lot of good people, good, talented, fun people that we just loved working with. But then also how we had to do stuff changed, because all of a sudden we needed to do the same things, but with 30% less resources. For me specifically, that meant instead of having a team, a franchise team for Hearthstone and Diablo that was around 10 people, then we only had one person left for community matters for all languages for those two franchises. So there was no individual language support or team anymore for World of Warcraft and the other franchises' community support. At that point, I said to myself, okay, I really enjoy working with others and enabling them to be their best awesome self. So I don't want to stick around as an individual performer for community, which was all my life until then. And I decided to switch roles within Blizzard towards localization production. So translating, localizing our games to the 7 European languages. And there I had a new set of opportunities because that team also went through a reduction in force of roughly 50%. And they also needed to do a lot more with vendors now instead of doing everything themselves, the entire localization of the game for the text, audio, and video. A lot of that needed to be sourced out now. And that was great. It was a new set of challenges. And I went there with a mindset of, hey, I know nothing. What is it that I can do for you to make your life easier? And that led to a couple of quick wins where I could really help, like in this moment, change policies for people for the better. So they actually had an easier time adapting to that change. And just as we got settled into our new rhythms and everything was taking shape, we're like, yep, now we're actually performing and stuff is going well. Then in 2020, we got the announcement of, hey, surprise, surprise, we are closing the entire Versailles office now. And that was then, the second time our world collapsed. But at that time, I at least was more prepared because I knew already, okay, this is a possibility. We have seen before, there can be bad surprises, even at Blizzard. And for me, I went through the 5 stages of grief in literally 5 minutes. Then came out like during the announcement, came out like, okay, cool. What kind of opportunities does that bring with it? Like I got really excited about my future because okay, now that I don't have a choice, that I have to go, how can we make the best out of that?
Wow.
And and that's then the mindset that I try to convey and bring near to my team, saying like, hey, I know this is a shock. I know we all have different emotions about that, and we all need to work through this at our own time. When you're good and ready, I want to sit down with each and every one of you to see, how can we keep providing the work that we're doing right now, because we're still getting paid for a year. Like it took again a year for that to take place. So we still want to do our jobs and we want to do them well. At the same time, I want each and every one of you to think about what is it that you want to be doing in a year? What is it that you are really passionate about? What is it that we can do right now to help you get onto that track and build towards that world of excitement and opportunity that I want you all to be in 1 year's time, when it's time to say goodbye to Blizzard. And that was a very interesting year. And then, COVID was in there as well, right? Like 2020. And then lots of different challenges. But for me personally, lots of opportunity to learn and grow. And that's also where I got more in touch with all these different coaching techniques to enable people to find their own path. And also explore what would become the foundation of the big 3 through workshops with my team to really put into practice what to do and how to build resilience, and not only talk about it in a theoretical manner. And so that's a very short overview about my career at Blizzard.
Well, from AAA to helping people in 17 years. So what would you say? I mean, you basically started in a AAA job, but so that might be the only viewpoint of the industry for you. But what do you feel Or do you have an overview of the games industry around like indie companies, different kind of types of jobs in the industry, and what would you say makes a difference, or why did you stick around so long in AAA?
Mm-hmm. So why I stuck around so long is because I really loved Blizzard. I loved my colleagues. I loved the work that we were doing. And also it was comfortable. So there was no danger. Blizzard was on the top of the market. We were only releasing awesome games. And for me, it was very close to blasphemy of thinking of going anywhere else. Because what we used to say is like, yeah, we are bleeding blue. And this kind of unconditional passion or dedication to a company can feel very good and empowering, but from a wider point of view can also be very dangerous and difficult because you open yourself up to being exploited in a sense. And it wasn't the case for me where I had to do like crazy overtime or anything like that. But there is many stories in the industry for AAA, including Blizzard and all the other companies where, yeah, like, oh, it's completely normal that we do overtime and that we like burn ourselves out. It's like, I think BioWare called it BioWare magic is going to happen at some point, right? Like, no, that's just people burning out and doing overtime, and that's not healthy.
Exactly.
And from the inside, it's hard to identify the difference, right? And to make a clear cut when you have to say enough is enough. But for us, because we were looking after publishing mostly and not creating the games ourselves, I would say it wasn't that bad. Of course, there were like big milestones like game releases and Gamescom and other big events that we had to organize where all hands on deck. And for 2-3 months, you were busy, but it was good busy. Like it wasn't burning out. It was like, oh, we're getting so much done. It feels good. We're achieving all the goals we set out to achieve. Players having a great time with it. Is like, it's really invigorating at that point and not draining. But of course, from my point of view, my experience, others could have had a completely different experience at that point as well.
Yeah. I think it's very interesting. A few points that you mentioned in there with the saying we are bleeding blue, and like, there's something about the corporate culture, and you have this not only in games. This is of course also all the tech bubble, all the different startups. But do you think, talking about corporate culture a little bit, this in games people are more prone to identifying very much with the job, and so there's a slippery slope basically towards getting sucked into like the culture and like, not in your case doing the crazy overtime, but I feel like there's this sort of, you are identifying a little bit too much with your work and it becomes like your whole world.
Definitely. Like in gaming attracts people who are passionate about games and that want, and that was the case for me as well. Like for me, it was the most awesome thing ever to be able to work at Blizzard. It was a dream come true because I loved the games with all my heart. I played them with my brother and my friends, and it was just the best possible job imaginable. When I was meeting with my friends who were still studying or then getting normal jobs, quote unquote, they're like, oh, Benedikt, I'm so envious of you. Like, that's so cool. Like, what an awesome job. And I'm like, yeah, I can't believe I'm getting paid for this. So there's definitely that tendency in gaming, or there was at least. I think today gaming has matured a lot and still people want to work in gaming because it's still cool and fun. But I think a lot of people realize it's a lot more fun and there's a lot more passion in it when you go to indie studios these days, because a lot of people go to the big studios, get disillusioned really quickly because like, okay, good, I have to do this in that certain way. And you're not feeling like this this nerdy, geeky gaming culture necessarily like we did 20 years ago, because it has matured so much and there's so much now on how to make more money more quickly, more regularly.
Oh, this is so interesting now, because I wanted to go ask some other questions, but this point now really, because we have this discussion a lot in the industry that it has matured and that things are different. I would say I'm definitely not working in the industry as long as you have. But for me, there was this like almost natural transition basically from being a gamer to working in games. Although before it happened, I never actually thought that it could happen. But it was like, yes, I am with my people now. And it felt like this, like you described, this nerdy kind of, like gamer vibe. But these days, what you would say is like it has matured, also came with a lot of like growing pains, I feel like. And you can see that, I think, definitely in the AAA space, also in the indie space, where I think there's a lot of like negotiations, discussions about what it means to work in the industry and like what the culture actually is. And I think there's definitely been a shift. And of course, in maturing, there's always very, very good things that are happening, but it definitely doesn't feel the same anymore. And I think that, many people would say that it's for the better.
It depends how you look at it, right? If you want to make money, it's better now. But so when you talked about just about culture and values and stuff, like one thing that came up in my mind immediately, like Blizzard had its core, has in theory still its core values, and one is gameplay first. And that you really felt back in the day, right? If it wasn't good enough, it wouldn't go out, and that's fine. And now we fast forward to what I like to call Diablo Immortal, the mobile game.
Oh my god!
And that game is monetization first. You can it's a good game.
Yes,
right? It's well done.
Yes,
but you go in there and it's not 5 minutes. You have the first pop-up that asks you like, oh, you want to spend some money here? After they feed you in with some free stuff, and it just gets so obnoxious that I uninstalled it the same day I started playing it.
So you do have a phone though?
I played it. Did I play it? Can you play it on the PC? I think I played it on the PC if it was possible. I don't even remember. I do have a phone. Yes.
I would mean.
Now I get the reference. Yeah. And so while the value is still enshrined on the big orc warrior in the middle of the plaza at Blizzard, gameplay first, those are to me just words now. Because before, yes, I could identify with that. And I said, yes, it was true. I'm 100% behind that everybody at Blizzard feels like this. And this is how we do things. Now it's just words on the floor, basically, because culture is not the values that we have on our walls. Cultures are the lived behaviors that the sum of all employees exhibit, right? And those get reflected in the products that these employees create together. And if I look at a product like Diablo Immortal, it's like, that's not in line with the values that you find on the Blizzard campus.
Yeah. This is a bit of a curveball, but a question's been cooking in my mind. Talking about a question to both of you very much, because I know you care about it too, Florian. The sort of culture and maturation of the games industry, together with the thought of location and also relocation. So you moved to France, surprisingly. I moved to London, surprisingly, when I went to work at Twitch. We had a bit of a similar position. We found out I was also sort of the first community manager for Twitch, a German speaker. And you mentioned this in your intro story that suddenly you first of all you're bleeding blue and we were bleeding purple, right? Very publicly even. And there's this. Well, you have a little on-site family and you have like a shared culture, but it's an island because you're sort of not that connected to the country you're in in necessarily, and you wouldn't be there if your job wouldn't invite you there. Now, this is not completely new and unique for gaming, but it's a thing because we are used to, as gamers, I think, to move to we move through islands all the time on the internet, right? When we surf the web, no, sorry, but 2000s lingo, but basically like you're always in different places, different communities. And I was wondering how that is with, sort of the maturation of that, but then also you want to mature into living, you don't just want to be, your home shouldn't necessarily be the company campus. I've started to care a lot about this, that, life is lived very much also in your free time. And can you even connect to your surroundings? That was a huge problem in my career at Twitch, that in London, I was finding no love, no joy. Curious how you guys see that, and especially also with, Berlin, from your perspective, Flo, being like a place that wants to be a good hub for gamers and game companies, with many companies and an ecosystem, and more than just, an island sort of in France, let's say, or in London.
Who's starting? I'm a co-host, so the guest should get the first answer.
Oh, okay. So I think you're definitely right. For me, it was like after 10 years at Blizzard, like I was playing World of Warcraft basically almost every day. And when you got home from work, you had dinner, and then you would hop on for raiding or playing with friends. And since I was the main tank as well, I needed to farm stuff in between. And after 10 years, I realized, okay, it does feel like a second job.
Yes.
Maybe let's not. So after 10 years, I started this, it was then in 2015, give or take, that I started realizing what you just talked about. So like, okay, like how do I actually make a home for myself here? And I was looking more into social contacts and finding a partner, which was always very important to me, but I hadn't actively pursued up to that point. Yeah, and I think looking back on it now, for me, it really took that time to find that special someone that you want to spend your life with, to break out of that bubble that was my Blizzard environment and everybody there, to start building a life outside of your work buddies as well. And for me now, it takes extra shape because we have our daughter is on the way. She should arrive in October if everything is going to plan. Thank you. And I met neighbors here who just opened up a RPG and tabletop gaming cafe here in Versailles. And I'm making new connections. I'm speaking more French all day, every day with everybody. So I'm in the middle of actually making this my home with my family, and it feels really, really, really good. And I really love and enjoy the process. But yeah, it took some active reflection and being kind, present, and open to get there, to make that transition purposefully, and not only go with what's comfortable and stay in your bubble and play World of Warcraft for 10 years, which, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed a lot and it brought me to where I am today. So I'm not terribly sad about it. But my social life was very much still in Germany. I was still then going back and forth to Stuttgart in particular, where many of my friends live, to party with my friends there for long weekends, and then to the Wacken Open Air once a year, where we partied for a week straight for 16 years in a row.
Wow, and really? I didn't know that. I didn't even know. We never talked about metal, did we?
Yeah, we should.
Oh, wow. That's great. I was in Wacken only once, 2008, but plenty of summer breezes and partisans and my own band at the time. And that's nice.
I've never been to Wacken. Wacken is over, as some people would say.
Yeah.
and only German speakers will understand.
It matured as well, let's say.
Yeah. I can definitely relate to this. I mean, yeah, we all had this moving for a job. I personally still am not 100% sure if I'm done with that part, which is interesting because I mean, Berlin definitely feels like a place where I would like to stay for longer. And it's been over 3 years now. But before that, I had moved quite a bit between different stations, and it was always for the job. But it was just what I prioritized. And I think coming to your question, Simon, I think in that case, it was like this hopping from island to island, or like for me, it was just very important to stay on the train, you know? I don't want to leave this industry. I don't want to leave games and like settle down in that sense. I wanted to put like the job first, basically, but because it means so much to me, and it still does. But I can feel now that it's becoming harder to think about going somewhere else because, like, I mean, first of all, I like what I'm doing right now, which is good. But I always liked what I was doing, but it always felt somewhat like, you know, this is probably not where the journey ends, or I couldn't do this forever. Or the place where I was basically only a place, right? I didn't move to Lithuania because I wanted to live in Lithuania. I moved there for the job. And before that to Hamburg, and before that Kassel. And so the coming to Berlin was the same in that regard. And I very much was thinking, oh yeah, so my contract is for like 2 years. Let's see, 2-3 years. And then I'm open for new adventures, maybe. Now I'm definitely here for some time longer. It feels like maturing in a way. And I definitely know that like I'm putting more effort into my apartment, putting more like, I have 2 cats, something that in my mind wouldn't have been possible before because I wouldn't know where I would be next year. So I wouldn't commit to these kind of things. And now I am. So let's see.
Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to ask you guys that because I started caring a lot about it and I've been seeing sort of space very differently. I've been thinking about many people go to work also to just be with people in like a mammalian sense, you know? And then of course we want to make sure that that time spent with people on work is like work we like and it's good. But, you know, I also spent a lot of time not going to work on my sabbatical, and it's very interesting. Like you're always looking for a place to be around people, a cafe, something public. I was part of like this third space. I don't know if you heard of that concept, but that's like a word to describe just spaces that aren't home, that aren't work, but something third. And just something I've been thinking about. And I'm glad to hear that you made it your home where you are, Benedikt. I think it's so important, and that you have the same feeling, Flo, and also that you guys are, you know, building infrastructure in Berlin that sort of isn't just discrete company offices, but also a more holistic, bringing people together, games industry, events, and so on. I know that's something you care a lot in your about in your work, and I just had an epiphany recently how important that stuff is. You know, that there is more than just, you know, work and home and nothing in between. And just the reference to Benedikt's story in which suddenly you're like, we're closing the office and a world breaks down, and it's like no joke, right? This is like a very serious one of the 2 places breaking down. Holy shit. That's why I thought about how important it is to build these muscles in between these little structures that hold things together also.
The fun thing to me really is something also that Benedikt mentioned is you said that if you want to earn money, now it's better, which I guess that is just maybe an expectation to, you know, for coming in and there already being jobs that pay well. But this process of maturing for me definitely also showed that if I uproot my life or if I commit to something for a longer time, although it is still my passion, for me, this maturing kind of process also brought with it this, like, maybe it's just a feeling of self-worth or impending doom of not being poor when I'm old. But like, you gotta pay me for my time, motherfuckers, you know? Like, this is something that, like, people, if they work out of passion, then there's a lot of, you know, oh, I will do this because it means so much to me. And like this component, like, it is definitely my main driving factor. But there's this other thing where I can clearly like compartmentalize things and say, well, this is my passion, but it is my job. And that means that certain criteria must be valid for me to do it as my main occupation. And that is for me one thing where I matured over the last years, because like I have goals now that not only work for like achieving something in my job, but that also come like with a certain amount of like, hey, what's left at the end of the month, you know?
Yeah. And I think you're hitting the nail on the head there. There needs to be an exchange of value. And if you bring passion, skills, and accomplishments to the company, they need to pay you in kind, right? And that's where the exchange of value takes place. What I found interesting, when you talked a lot, Russ, just now about like, this is still my passion and that's why I'm doing this. What took me a while and what I found is that our passion can express itself in more than one way. So just because we have an affinity towards games, and in my case, for example, that's because of I really love collaborative games. I really enjoy achieving things together. This does not have to express itself in a gaming company. Like it's the same passion that expressed itself for me in Blizzard, like creating games and being that linchpin between community and developers and achieving like great experiences together. That same passion that drove me to do that now drives me to achieve breakthroughs with my clients, to help them get where they need to be in a better, more healthy, more successful state. And that, I think, something we need to be acutely aware of, is that we don't need to follow our passion in a sense, but we should make sure that our passion follows us in what we do, that we look at what is behind me loving to work at Blizzard or Twitch or any other company, right? What is it that drives me there? And then see how can that passion express itself in different ways. And for me, it's also just collaborative games and going to Cool Beans. So that's the cafe for my neighbors here in Versailles, and just play games with awesome people. But when it comes to my job, again, there needs to be an exchange of value. And unfortunately, I'm not in a position where I can do coaching and leadership development for free. So as you said, I also still need to be paid to keep doing what I love doing and what other people tell me I'm actually good at to gain that money and also take care of my growing family at this point. Yeah, this concept of, oh, this is my passion, I have to work in gaming, is like, no, gaming is but one expression of it. And that's also a discussion I often have with people who say like, oh no, I have to work in gaming. I have to. Like, no, you don't. Like, let's look at what actually motivates you. Let's look at what is this underlying passion? Where is it coming from? And then we can look for different outlets other than this one specific company in that one specific sector. Because if you shoehorn yourself that much onto one specific thing, A, your chances of success is severely limited, and B, you're opening up yourself so much to be undervalued and underpaid and exploited that it's not good for you in the long term neither.
So why don't we go into this for a moment? When your time at Blizzard came to an end and you kind of had this sort of Damocles over your head, it's going to be over in a year, and you did start coaching people exactly on this, right? You identified that as an important thing. My people, my surroundings, they need to make their own choices. Suddenly they're put into this limbo, but that actually brings them agency, or it forces them to exercise agency. The things you just kind of described, how would you go through that with somebody specifically?
So yeah, what I found like during that process and later on well, it's being kind, being present, being open. And being kind starts with, I'm feeling bad because this is happening, and it's okay to be feeling bad because that feeling just communicates to you that this was an important part of your life, and that's over now. And that's will always be sad, and it's okay to fully feel those emotions and take your time processing this. Like, that's the first thing, because if you just ignore it and try to power through, then you burn yourself out and you make yourself sick, and that's not the way to go.
Mhm.
So, and once we have that kindness for ourselves and also say like, hey, this is to no fault of my own, like there's nothing I could have done to convince people at Activision to not close down the France branch to make it more profitable for them prior to the merger with Microsoft. And there's nothing in the world that you can control or influence about that if you work in the satellite office. So again, be kind to yourself. This is not your fault. This is not of your doing, but also be present that this is not a permanent setback. This is not personally targeted at you, Benedikt, that you're the cause and why we are closing this down. And it's not a pervasive thing. It only happens in this specific aspect of your life right now. But look at all the other things you still have. You still have your health. You still have money coming in. You still have your family. You still have all these awesome people in your life that all go and share the same challenges that you have right now. So you're actually not alone. And once you realize that, once you're present with all these facts and all these actually good and valuable things in your life, that's then where you get to that place where you say, okay, what am I open to do about this then? Like, this is the stuff I cannot control. What is the stuff that I can control? And that's where we get into building resilience, right? Once we have that awareness that change will happen, there's like no doubt about it. All of life is about change, and there will be change that doesn't make us initially happy or or all giddy, like our company closing down. And then we can ask ourselves, okay, if tomorrow my job is gone, what will I do at that point? And how can I prepare myself now for that eventuality that is more and more likely to happen the longer I'm staying in this position and at this firm, that there will be something negative happening in the future. It will become more and more likely over time. And then we look at what is it actually that's important to me. And that's then when I sat down with my team and said, like, what is it that you want to do with your life? What is it that brings you joy and fulfillment? And what is it that drove you to come to Blizzard and do what you do right now? And identifying that and then finding different outlets for that are not Blizzard, then all of a sudden you have a goal you want to get towards to, like, oh, yes, this is actually like what I've been dreaming about doing, but I never dared because it was so safe and cozy here at Blizzard or wherever we are right now. And once you have that far off goal, like this direction in which you want to develop, I like to ask people, is like, okay, who is that person? Who is that future version of yourself who will achieve that job, position, goal, whatever it may be, simply as a consequence of who they are and the behaviors that they exhibit every day? And then you identify different aspects and behaviors and values that future you has and exhibits that just make them get that position as a consequence of how awesome they are. And once we have those parts, once we have broken it down a little bit, then we can take a look at, okay, what is the first step we can take here and now to actually move you towards that person? You said they have like certifications in a language or in another skill, right? Let's see what we can do right now with Blizzard, if we still have some spare training budget lying around, that we can get you onto that program and you actually educate yourself. And then in 6 months' time, you have that certification. And that's one of the many steps you can take towards becoming that future version of yourself that will find it way more easy to achieve that goal, to find new employment or create their own company by going out of your comfort zone a little bit every day, not too much, not so that we say, this is too much, I'm shutting down. And this accumulates with time, and you're becoming that person, and you're achieving that goal as a consequence. And that's what the big three are all about: to have that kindness for yourself, to be able to envision that future version of yourself, and also accept yourself for who you are and the things that are happening to you, being present with all the good things in your life, not focusing on what's missing, but appreciating what you have, and then being open to building on top of that to fill in the gaps between where you are right now and where you want to be in the future.
Very nice. It has a very complete ring to it.
I like holistic things, yes. If you read my book.
Plugging the book. Smart move.
Yes, no, but so just as a side story, right? It begins with kindness, and it ends with how we as a species can kind of save the world, right? So it really is the whole 9 yards, from the tiniest of things to the biggest of achievements. Because like when I started writing that, I was asking myself, okay, what's like the biggest goal that you could try to achieve? And then this fantasy of saving the world came up. And what I translated that to is to equip everybody with a mindset, structure, and tools. So the why, the how, and the what, if you like, to overcome all current and future challenges. And if you sum all of those up and there's no challenges left, then we as a species kind of fulfilled the fantasy of saving the world in my book, literally, as well.
I will play devil's advocate now, because I think this might be an interesting talking point, and I want to hear what comes out of this. So what you described to me, if I came outside of games, or if I would look on it, with a sort of like, oh, these nerds kind of viewpoint, which still exists in some ways in the world. I find it interesting that you say you frame it as sort of like a game. And I think that is what many people in games and through gaming do, is like, kind of seeing things as leveling through them maybe, or like challenges are there to overcome. Maybe you have to grind some more. But that could lead to what I, in this case, as the advocate, would say, oh yes, so these gamers now think that everything is just like the next challenge. It's just like an achievement to do. So, and now they believe that they know about games and now they can save the world. Do you feel that is a thing where, like, because, like, of course we say on the one side, yes, if you have many skills in games that can be applied in the real world, and hiring companies want to see that even more now. And then we have this other side where people believe that, hey, I work in games and I'm a gamer and I actually can save the world.
No, so that's not how I would put it. And I didn't, if it came across like that, that wasn't my intention. So I think there's...
I'm not saying that. That's okay. Why I was overloading it to to get an interesting talking point.
Gotcha. Awesome. So I think there's two parts to what you just said. Like, let me address the first part as I heard it, and then let me know if I got it right. I think games are a safe space to hone a lot of skills and to do that in a safe environment. For example, like role-playing games allowed me to get out of my comfort zone in social settings, as well as just like living some dreams and passions that I would be too chicken shit to do in real life, right? Like in a role-playing game, you can play a warrior and a barbarian who jumps into a horde of goblins, swinging your two-handed sword like, wee, I'm the hero. But in reality, I'm not joining the army. I don't want to fight in any wars. I actually don't want to kill anybody. I just like this heroic fantasy, right? So there's this difference of trying stuff and living things that you don't necessarily want to do in real life, but also building skills, and especially through role-playing games, you have to communicate so much. You have to make plans. You have to identify what is everybody's strengths and opportunities for improvement, right? And how do we go about this challenge, and how do we face overwhelming odds and come out of it the other side in this sandbox world where there are no limitations in theory. And there you can just come up with a whole bunch of creative problem solving and trying things, and just at the same time having a good time with other people, increase social bonding, increase your social skills and your communication, which I believe are essential skills in this day and age, especially what we call soft skills. I think it's a mislabeling, like soft and hard skills. I more would call them essential skills and specific skills, because the hard skills, like, yes, I can design something specifically, or I can create a website. And that's a very specific skill. But the essential skills we all need, and that is communication and conflict resolution and how we show up at work. In the widest sense, that is leadership to me, because leadership is all about how we influence others and how we play well with others or not. And that is conflict resolution, that is communication, that is being clear about goals and getting everybody excited about the same thing, to build these visions of a brighter future that really excite everybody. And then you have that, and then they can pour their heart and passion into that, right? And then it becomes a delight to be working hard at something because it's in line with your values. You feel you know what the vision is, you got a clear understanding, and this is motivating to you because you're building towards a better world, not only for yourself, but also other people. And I think games are an excellent tool to try that in a safe environment where there are zero real life stakes, right? Like, you're not tanking a company if you get it wrong, but you learn from your mistakes and you have a different outlook on things. So for that part, I believe games are super awesome and important, but it doesn't mean that you all of a sudden can quote unquote save the world. But what saving the world again means to me with the mind of a scientist, it's one big task, and you keep breaking it down in smaller tasks, and you talk to people what their definition is of that goal, and you come to an understanding, and you break those tasks down, and then you might have a million billion tasks, but the physicist in me then says, yeah, if we add all of those up, and if we do all the small tasks, there might be new tasks popping up along the way, but those challenges then should be better challenges, right? Like, challenge, if you're unemployed, the challenge is I need to find a job, right?
Yes.
And then once you have a job, you still have the challenge of I need to keep my job, and I need to find a job that actually does not burn me out. So while problems never go away, or challenges, however you want to call it, depending on your philosophy, we always create better challenges and better problems for ourselves. So we'll never get there. We'll never overcome the sum of all challenges. But as we are in the process of doing it, we create better challenges for ourselves and the world that we live in. And that is as close, I think, as we can get to the fantasy that constitutes like saving the world in a superhero or fantasy setting, right? Yeah, those were the two parts that I saw.
Yep, definitely.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it totally makes sense. And I think it even, although one thing I wouldn't agree with is that talking about like tanking the company, if you talk to some people who play EVE Online, I think the stakes are quite high.
Oh, okay, yes. But yes, I didn't think about EVE. That is the one outlier.
But
apologies.
But otherwise, I would completely agree. There, like, games are games, and the real world is the real world. But I think why it makes sense, and why it actually, from my experience and how I would see it as true and valuable, why it makes sense is if you can translate it and put this to a test in sort of other fields. And the things that you said are basically things that people get also taught in therapy, for example. Like looking at not this huge mountain of problems as a depressed person, for example, that you cannot overcome and that like basically make you not even start your day. But there are smaller problems, and just start with the one. And then let's see where you go. And I think from that perspective, what you say holds water, and that's what I say would see as, yes, you teach it through games, but you can like translate it to other fields, and that's what makes it a good philosophy.
Awesome.
I also have an opinion on this because I've thought about this a lot, and I would like to see if I can put this together. So I've been working on this idea that maybe wants to be a movie or something called Purpose of Gaming. And it's all about what you guys just described. The fact that in my opinion, still undertold, like not told enough story of how much games actually promote agency. And especially for kids, young people who are not in the position of sort of feeling agency in their body. And it's a very bodily feeling. So as an example, I never played sports as a kid much because it almost is like a sort of not class necessarily, but sort of there was nobody in my family who played sports. So there's no history, there's no culture there. And then to go into the football club, not that I would have wanted to play football very much necessarily, but of my village wasn't really available to me on many fronts, right? But if you play sports as a kid, like properly, I think your agency is just higher because you're used to using your body and committing it into the game. It's a game, again,
yes,
obviously, right? But it's a physical game.
And it's a social structure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's, again, a space, right? As mentioned previously. And if that's not afforded to you and you don't have a substitute like video games or like sort of anything in the fantasy realm, I would say you're off much worse. But with a mouse and WASD, you can make hella moves, in a game, and they are meaningful. That's why parents get weirded out by kids playing because they're locked in, because they're sort of leaving their body and entering a virtual body, and that's very meaningful. Now, so that's the beginning of the thought, and then I'm realizing, holy shit, you can actually have a very magical life, like a life full of possibility and meaning and agency and love and I think you alluded to that too, Benedikt, by sort of, you guys know LARPing, right?
Yes.
And you can kind of LARP yourself into certain things. You can kind of pre-design a character.
LARP until you make it. That's the
LARP until you make it. Everybody knows this thing.
That's the saying we gamers have.
Exactly. And it's kind of this thing where you, like, for example, when I quit my job, I thought I'm going to become a podcaster. But there was truth to that, but it was actually somehow the task was too big and too complicated. And I was, thinking of my big idols like Tim Ferriss and stuff. And I thought I need to have a website like Tim Ferriss and whatnot. You want to copy monkey see, monkey do, and then you see but it's an insurmountable task. And also Tim Ferriss' website in particular is extremely idiosyncratic. You can't rebuild that shit. That's actually completely misguided. So it would have at the time been much more helpful to me to kind of LARP and say, well, I don't know if I, and who's that even, if I will be, all these big words, a podcaster. But it's like, what if I like LARP being one for like a month and I, try around with this, or I see like this sort of minimum viable product version of it, and then I think you can actually do crazy things. And right now I want to use my philosophical skills for like coaching, consulting, and advising. And I've actually LARPed myself into becoming more like Dirk Gently. I don't know if you know Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency.
No, never heard of it.
Douglas Adams novel and very good Netflix series. Highly recommended. And he's this guy, he's like kind of a crazy guy, and he just walks around and gets into stuff. And that's his job, He just stumbles through the world. And I was like, no, I really like this. I just want to meet people, stumble around. And yes, for me, this, like, there's a lot of possibility and magic in maybe taking things not so seriously, or like seeing them more as games. And games are, and everything is a game for me. And all games are serious, and they're like games to win everywhere. And I think there's also a huge question in like Or which game do you want to play? Which game, like, and how do you want to play that? And what's your, as a game, you're sort of a game, you can be a game master of your own life, you know. What are the rules of your game? You can, that's leadership to me also. What are your standards that you're setting, and so on and so on. So I really believe in this strongly.
I just loved the last part of what you said, especially because, not to plug my book.
No,
but the question is on the cover is, how do you want to play your game of life, right? And that's exactly that sentiment that you just touched on. Because if we see it like that, like, hey, there's life is change, and there's a bunch of choices that we can do, and there's a bunch of things we cannot influence and we can only react to. And why not go at this with a curious and open mind and say, like, hey, like, let's see what we can make out of this, right? And this has all the qualities of a game to me, because that's what we do in games. We go explore, we do stuff we think is fun, we accumulate XP, right? So we get better at what we do, we achieve different things. We just do it in a self-directed manner and don't let the game play us, but we define the game we want to play and put safeguards into place to what we think is meaningful to us in our point of view. The one thing that I would like, where I maybe have a different understanding of the phrase than you guys, and I would caution, is this fake it until you make it. For me, that has a very negative connotation in the workplace.
Yep.
Because there's like people who know nothing, pretending they know everything, and nothing works, especially if they're in leadership, quote unquote leadership positions. Yeah. If they are high up manager, and you know it's not going to work, but they are not listening to feedback, they are closed off, they are not kind to you or themselves by digging their heels in, they're not reflecting on their own weaknesses and strengths. So in short, they are not kind, neither are they present, neither are they open. And with
very bad.
And there you get into that realm of, I cannot influence that person anymore. I only have to accept what they are doing, and can I still work under these conditions? And that's where we also get into the wrong part of resilience. Like when people tell me their understanding of resilience is putting up with toxic behavior. No, that is not resilience. That is how you make yourself sick and sad and burn yourself out, being proud of, for 5 years I'm in this awful place, and I lost all my hair and was depressed 3 times. I lost the love of my life, but I'm still here. Like, yeah, no, that's not resilience, right?
No.
So resilience is really about how do we bounce back, and how do we identify that these setbacks are indeed not permanent, pervasive, or personal. And so those two go hand in hand. And that's why I'm always careful when people have this understanding of fake it until you make it, or what resilience means to them. Because for me, it's like what I tried when I told you guys the story about when I got into the localization department. What I did was I went to everybody and said, like, I know nothing about what you're doing. What can you teach me? So my recommendation, instead of faking it, pretending I'm the localization guru, and they know exactly I'm not, because we have known each other for like 15 years, and they know Benedikt has never done anything with localization. Instead of faking that, I said, like, I don't know what's going on. I see my role here and my responsibility to understand what are the challenges you are facing, and how can I make those easier for you, to remove roadblocks so you can do what you do best in the most efficient and streamlined manner. And that's how I actually started building trust with the guys, right? Because they knew my background was not in localization. So if I would have gone there and told them, this is how you do stuff now, that would have been horrible. Because I have no idea what's the best way to do it. And they do. They've been doing their jobs for years on end, and they have a really awesome track record of being awesome and getting stuff done. So why the hell should I not learn from them? But that's what many leaders, I think, or aspiring leaders get wrong, that they feel they need to pretend. They need to pretend that they know everything. It's much more efficient and much better for your culture and much better for trust building if you're just kind, present, and open with the people around you and say to them, this is what I don't know. I hope you can teach me. This is what I bring to the table. On the other hand, that's all the stuff I can help you with to become like better and more awesome at what you're doing. So yeah, those are kind of the things that I heard in your story where I wanted to add my 2 cents
Sure.
to how it makes sense to me. And
but what do you put what do you base your LinkedIn grift on then if you don't pretend to know everything?
So, but that's a beautiful thing about coaching, right? Like a coach doesn't tell you what to do.
Yes.
They just hold the space for you to find your own answers. And I think that's also what fascinates me so about coaching. And I never thought about it like that. So thanks for putting that out there. But I think those 2 things are naturally connected, because coach just goes there and asks questions and tries to understand. And I think a good leader should have first and foremost a whole bunch of good coaching qualities as well.
Yes. I think, and I totally agree with everything that you said. I just want to make that clear, although I'm making stupid jokes, that I think there's a difference between motivating yourself to tackling tasks that you feel are too big for you, and sort of telling yourself, like your inner voice saying, oh yes, I will just break it down in smaller things. And that is actually not contrary at all to what you're saying, that, I will start there and of course be humble about it as well. But if you are in a role where you are actively, as you mentioned it, like trying to influence people, or actually there's a power dynamic, which definitely is the leadership or management position towards other colleagues and workers. If you pretend there, then that leads into a whole lot of problems.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Simon, one more thing that came to my mind, and sorry, then give it back to you. When you talked about like LARPing your way through, what I heard out of that a little bit, and just let me know if I understood it right, because that's how it worked for me, that you did some reframing from like, hey, I want to have a successful podcast to I want to become a podcaster. And then what does a podcaster do? He just has conversations with people and records it and uploads them to the internet. So, that's actually something you can start doing. And again, that's how it worked for me when I put the big 3 to the test for myself. Like
I was going to ask you
my
about
own
that.
book, right?
Yeah.
And that was exactly the same thing, where I said, like, let's test my hypothesis if that works for me, because I always wanted to write a book when I was younger, but it always seemed so daunting and impossible. And once I rephrased that to, wait a second, like, what about the end goal is the same, the output is the same, the book, right, will be written. But what if I rephrase the goal to, I want to become an author? Because an author is simply a person who writes a little bit every day. And when they're done with that, they have a book.
Yes.
So
it's this thing, I am not a podcaster. I do a podcast because it was part of a project. And because Simon, like we discussed this earlier in different episodes, but like because Simon was the podcaster and we hired him to do podcasts. And then we decided that, hey, we have different perspectives on this and I should just like come on and try. Yeah. And I'm still trying, but I'm also a podcaster, now because I am actually doing it. I never thought I would be, and I never had the goal of being one. So, but here I am, probably still LARPing, but I'm just doing it.
And it's all behavioral. It's like all about this framing of like, or I would even like you put it also one way, Bene, you could use the other way around. For me, the mantra is what works, what works well. very much in line, like with the same spirit of your be kind, be present, and open. Like not what works while I kill people. No, what works well in good spirits. And for me, what often works is for me, what often works is not like if I need an identity, I can kind of throw my LARP fishing rod and be like, okay, I'm gonna fish for this, and just wait a little bit and be patient, and it will probably come to me over time because I've got that rod out in the water. There's also the other thing is like very behaviorally structuring things where I'm like, I don't know if I'm a podcaster, but I do record them. I don't know if I'm an author, but I do write.
But that makes you a podcaster and an author, because that is a definition. That's a human who does a certain activity.
Exactly.
And that's the beauty of it, because then the journey becomes the destination.
Yeah,
and
the focus is on the activity and the behavior, right? Not on the result so much. I think that's what I was pointing out. Sorry,
the result just happens as a consequence, and it takes all the pressure off, and you can enjoy yourself while doing it, and you can be completely aware that the first page that you write will not be the best page that you write, or the first podcast that you guys did is probably not the best podcast that you ever did. But that's also the joy of it. That like, yep, going to make mistakes, but then we also learn from them. And what we do after that, like we can't, what was it? Like you can't have your 1000th goal without starting with your first or something like that.
Sure.
Yes.
Or step.
At this point, I will quote, because usually Simon has the philosophical kind of input here, but do you know Jake, the philosopher?
Jake?
Yeah. Jake the dog.
Jake the dog?
Jake the dog, who says, dude, sucking at something is the first step to being sort of good at something.
Wow, Jake. Dude.
And that's an Adventure Time reference for all the Adventure Time fans.
Gotcha. Wise doggy. Yeah, but that's it. Like, you need to get over this fear of failure, because failure is A, how we learn, and B, it's also in the end like just doing stuff, getting small things done is how we create motivation for ourselves. Because a lot of times you hear, oh, I can't find the motivation, which makes it sound like motivation is lying around somewhere. Like, oh, I found a rich vein of motivation in my room today. It's like, no. Motivation comes from you doing a little bit, and then you look at it over time. It's like, oh, I did a little bit for a week or a month, and it's like I've got 10 pages written already. Like, holy crap, I can actually do it. Like, it's not unrealistic that there will be a book at some point, and that's where you create motivation for yourself by being open to doing all these tiny little steps, putting systems into place that actually automate for you, that you do a little bit every day. Like nowadays I'm on Duolingo, which is actually, like, side note, one of the best gamified apps that I've come across ever. And it's basically a game in itself. But what I do, I get up, I brush my teeth, I do a little bit sports, and then I sit down on the couch and I start my Duolingo. So I have the system of when I do it for a little bit, but that over time will accumulate and will improve my French and allow me to talk with doctors for the birth of my child, and also build better relationships with French people and find French clients or a French speaking position in the future. All of that will be a consequence of my systems that I put into place of doing a little bit of Duolingo every day. And Duolingo is so good because they have these streaks that you say, like, hey, you did French for 10 days in a row. That's awesome. Keep on going. And that motivates you, because we don't want to break streaks. Like, we're like, yes, I want to make it as big, as long as possible. And this achievement character, this gamification, works wonder in you actually sitting down for at least 1 minute and doing one small exercise every day to not break your streak. And once you're in it, you have different achievements you can unlock, or you get boosts to your XP that you're higher on the leaderboards for the next 15 minutes. And like, more often than not, I'm like, okay, that's enough. And then I get a random XP boost. I'm like, crap, now I have to do another 15 minutes. And I sit down for another 15 minutes and do more French lessons because I want to maximize the value I get from that XP boost. And just a supremely well done app that is honestly the best game I've played on a mobile. And you learn awesome stuff as a consequence. So really, really well done. So I think that's one great example of how gamification actually can work for the good and betterment of mankind, and not like get more and more money out of your pocket.
Yeah. The Duolingo immoral coming soon.
Jesus, I was thinking how to work that in, but you could.
Yeah. Hey,
hopefully not.
Hopefully not. Well, it's already, it guilt trips you a bit.
I mean,
the bird,
that bird
yeah.
definitely has an immoral side to it.
Yeah, but I think it's okay. Hey, I have a question. I think it's something that's really important here. So I think the kind of realm that we're talking in right now is kind of in this, like, so for me, maybe not for everybody, but for me already kind of well known. Like, it's about behaviors, it's about habits, James Clear, Atomic Habits. Habit change is really identity change. That's where this whole LARPing thing comes in, blah, blah. Cool. And I really like that you're standing up for change and this truism of life is change. I really believe in that. I think the world will also be a bit better if we understand this more. But so there are these prescribed things, for example, like streaks, also a classic meme or a method sort of, like, I don't know, Jerry Seinfeld or something, just write comedy every day and put an X on the thing. And so.
Yeah.
So I've spent a lot of time trying this stuff, and then somehow things didn't work so well many times. And I was like, why is that? And then I started thinking more about things like ADHD and how hard it is for me to get into an activity, and that this very small, like in the morning I do my sports, then I do my Duolingo, I don't know, like sticking to these things, this is hard, Okay, you can, and then you can beat yourself up and say, maybe I'm just undisciplined, or I don't want it bad enough or something. But I also have a little bit of a ADHD angle, and I know you care about this too, about neurodivergent, and that you've developed in your teaching approaches to neurodivergence, or neurodivergent people, or people who suspect to be. So I'm curious how you see those alternative potential approaches to these common ways of behavioral change, or the stuff that you need to sort of become a different person if you want a different career, if you want to get more healthy, if you want to have a better relationship, and all these things.
Yeah, so I think the first thing to understand is no two brains on the planet are alike, and so are no two neurodiverse brains alike. So there's not one solution that fits all who have ADHD or who identify as neurodiverse. So, and that's again the beauty for me with the big three, because the only thing that helps is to get to know yourself, and as a manager or leader, get to know that person, being kind, present, and open. Like sitting down with the person, like, hey, what worked well for you in the past? Like, what works well for one person does not necessarily work well for somebody else. Like my wife has a friend, and she also is ADHD diagnosed. And what helps her to do her chores, like washing dishes or cleaning the apartment, like she can't get herself to do it, right? Like if you tell her clean the apartment, like super important, there is a judge coming, and if your apartment is clean, you get $1 million. She couldn't do it, right?
Yeah, right.
So,
that's exactly it, right? Like,
and what helps her is to put on YouTube a video of somebody cleaning or doing their chores, and then she can do it. Like if she has the feeling she does it alongside with somebody else, all of a sudden that blockade is gone, and she just flows with it and does it. Another thing that helped her is, I'm not going to clean my entire apartment, I'm cleaning for 5 minutes and then putting an alarm. And after 5 minutes, she's okay to stop. She allows herself to stop. More often than not, she's like, oh, there's only 3 glasses left. Okay, I clean those 2 now. And then it's also done. But there is no one silver bullet that fits all. And what we have done and what we keep doing is in our program, in our leadership program specifically, talking to people who identify as neurodiverse and say like, hey, these are the things that we gathered thus far that has worked for other people in the course. Is there anything that you think will work for you? Like, try it out, embrace it, make it your own. And if you have new insights, if you found something else that works for you and that isn't on here yet, please let me know so we can add it to the documentation so that future classmates have even more information to look through and find opportunities how they can make it work for themselves. So to me, it's this really exciting field where we are learning by doing. And I have to admit to everybody that I talk to, like, hey, I think I have a very neurotypical brain, or maybe even over-focused. Like, my brain is like, oh, that seems to make sense. Let's do that. And then I sit down and do that. And there's no further back and forth. There's no discussion, right? Like, it actually drives me and my brothers, I think we all have very similar traits, and it drives our wives insane because like, oh, and then he just identifies something that makes sense and he does it. Like, but that's an outrage. How can he do it so simply? Because it doesn't come natural to them, right? So, but in that scenario, the only way I can help you is to learn from you and admit that this is how it works for me. This is what I've gathered works for other people for different reasons. See what like works for you, what resonates with you, make it your own. If you have to adjust it to your needs, do it. And if you have additional insights, please do share, because that helps us help even more people down the road. And it's just this journey of discovery that keeps on going, which I find super, super interesting in the neurodiverse work space as well. And helping leaders also understand that they need to be especially kind, present, and open with their neurodiverse co-workers is so important, because they need to have those conversations and they need to be open and vulnerable and saying like, I have no idea what you're going through. Like, how can I build trust with you in the first place that you become comfortable telling me what works for you so I can identify how I can best support you and your environment that you can do the best work that you're able to do, right? Having these conversations needs trust and needs vulnerability, especially on the side from the leader who needs to be leading that change. Because a lot of, like, I also heard a lot from people who are now identified as neurodiverse or were diagnosed, that they are super afraid of bringing that up in job interviews or with a new manager or in general, because they don't want to be judged and they don't want this to be held against them when it comes to promotion time or any other things like that. So you need that open and honest culture that you get by being kind, present, and open with yourself and everybody else around you. And their neurodiverse co-workers can really thrive as well and don't need to hide, don't need to pretend they're somebody else in order to feel they have to do it to safeguard their job. So sorry, there was, yeah, as you said, it's something that I found super fascinating, and actually
it's very important. Yeah.
Very good use case for proper leadership, and that there's no one solution fits all. So yeah, getting very excited apparently.
Yes,
when I'm talking about that.
And that spirit allows you as a leader also to put people in the right positions, right? Like you would put, different classes, in the right physical but also behavioral position in a raid or something, right?
You
like
don't put your healer up front.
Word.
Of course, it doesn't work. Like, he's the best healer in the world, but gets one shot. It's like not his fault.
Yeah, exactly. No, but like really hyper true. And also the fact that helps you allow people to say, hey, look, I'm a healer, or I'm a rogue, I need some tanks around me, like I can't do this weird brunt work invoicing, but if you leave me alone for 2 weeks, I'm going to come up with a way better solution that's going to scale like crazy. Like something Bill Gates quote about hiring lazy people because they built the best solutions or whatever. Huge. I mean, huge. Totally underestimated. And maybe this is a good time to ask you about your leadership program that you are indeed offering to companies and leaders. I would love for you to introduce it, and maybe that's also like the beginning of the close for this. But yeah, for now, please introduce what you're offering now. To conclude the circle of your long career at Blizzard and your own career and behavioral change.
So that is actually So there's a program. So it's called the Big Three program because it has to do with the Big Three. A surprise, surprise. And it really had its roots when I was going through that time at Blizzard, trying to put together workshops that would help my teammates to get through that in one piece. And what came out of it, the other end, after refining it with Jan and Morris, my associates with whom I work closely on the program, is really like this. We like to call it, it's a catalyst for continuous growth. And as you have seen, I really like holistic approaches that take everything into account. And therefore, that program is also 24 hours spread out over at least a month to give you time to put into practice what we are talking about, not only in class, but then also at your place of work, with other people, with real challenges, to see what works for you and what doesn't. And then the week later, we debrief on those experiences and before we move on with additional content. And it really starts, again, being kind to yourself, that we learn from mistakes, that's how we move forward, that we are present and identifying our strengths, but also our opportunities for development and what are the values that we have in common with the people around us, and then being open to shaping our future behavior to embrace what works for us from the program and do that continuously, one step at a time, towards that greater goal of building a successful and inclusive culture for everybody in the team and in the company. And where we start is really the self-directed change, right? Like taking care of yourself, how you do that. Like we are using mindfulness, systems, habits, and all that good stuff in the first 2 days. Then we transition into inspiring change in others, which is all about trust and leadership techniques, also understanding what is it that makes us happy and fulfilled at the workplace, and how we can use coaching techniques to find that out for ourselves, but also for others in our teams. Before then, in the third week, we move into awesome. Now that we know how to affect meaningful change for ourselves and inspire that same journey in others, how do we work with these other inspired individuals to create the culture that we all want to live and work in? And again, culture being the sum of all the lived behaviors, not some fancy words on the wall. and last but not least, in the last week, the last 2 days, we talk about, now that we have all this awesome leadership stuff covered, from self-leadership to inspiring others to building the culture and teams that we all seek and want, how do we manage all of that? What are the specific tools and techniques that a manager needs to achieve optimal performance for themselves and their team? How do you do written communication, particularly on top of the verbal communication techniques that we already went through? How do you manage and prepare meetings? How do you manage and prepare interviews from both sides, so that once you come out of this program, you had this really holistic experience taking you from A to Z, that you can continue putting into practice with the material that we give to you, which by now is 66 pages, I think, with one principle per page, where on the one half you have the theory and what it's all about, and then the second half is about how you can actually implement it for yourself. And then you take from that what works for you, all under the umbrella of the one thing that you need to remember is to be kind, present, and open. And then in the open part, you can plug in any of the tools that you learned and that you want to use more of to really kickstart that cultural development in your company and have this holistic experience where you put stuff into practice right away and you keep putting it into practice after the course is done. And then we can also come in 6 months later or 3, 6, 12 months, whenever convenient, to check in with the team. How's it going? What they found easy and good to keep doing and what they're struggling with, to really keep that journey alive and not make it, here's the training, cool, we did it, now everybody go back to what you did before, because that doesn't work. So hence, again, this holistic approach that I'm a very, very big fan of, to actually make long-term change with many tiny, small, accumulated actions.
Great. Yeah, thanks for introducing that. And I can say that how do I say this well? We've talked a bit about this, and I've attended one of your workshops, and I've told you this in private, but I also want to do that on air, that the way you do that, I'm often skeptical with coaches, like you said, a lot of fake it till you make it characters out there. But I think you're a very pragmatic guy, and you also have found kind of this spiritedness, and I am always impressed how you also embody it. I think that's the most important thing. Also, how you described your coaching program, you start with the leaders themselves, and if they can't affect change in themselves, then it's hard to affect change sustainably in others, because you will just push others around the way you push yourself around. And I feel like you don't seem to me like you push yourself around much. You have actually implemented, you believe so strongly in these values of kindness, presence, and openness because they work for you, like you said, right?
And they work in all aspects of my life. It's a different story, but it's also how I met the love of my life and married her, and now we have a child together, right? Was the exact same principles, but just used on my personal life. And
well, I would
same result.
Like to hear that, actually, because I think at the end of, I've been starting to write my own book, and there's a working title here that's Everything is Scaffolding for Love. And I actually believe that when I talk about spaces and people coming together and, these kind of practices and schools of thoughts, then they're not there to control us. They're there to free us and to live a life of love and to also do our work with love. So I would actually think we definitely have the time to hear that story, if you would be willing to tell it.
Sure.
I think it's very important.
I was just trying to be conscious of the time.
No. I'm a bit conscious too, but there's always time for a love story.
Awesome. So basically, when I was younger, I wasn't my biggest fan. I always felt I wasn't smart, funny, or good looking enough to deserve or find a life partner. And that really held me back well into my 30s. And I never had really a meaningful relationship until my 30s. Because this self-limiting belief was so strong that I didn't even try. I didn't put myself out there. And as I was discovering, like, before the big three came to me, like in that clarity, I started to discover just kindness for myself. That's how it started for me. It's like saying, Benedikt, what are you doing to yourself? Like, you have an awesome job, you have your health, your family is awesome, you have like the best friends in the world. The only one thing that is missing is that life partner. So first off, appreciate all the good things in your life, right? And once I was able to accept that, the entire dynamic shifted, because then I realized, hey, okay, there's that one thing that I'm missing. and that's fine. What am I doing about it actually right here, right now? And I realized the past 10, 15 years, I was just sitting at home waiting for magically that other person to discover me, that we could embrace each other. And like, yeah, of course that's not going to work. If I'm not putting myself out there, how is anybody ever supposed to fall in love with me? So what I started doing is, again, I gamified just dating apps. Like I went on Tinder, I went on OkCupid, and what else was out there. And I said, okay, every day for 30 minutes, I'll swipe left and right. And I do so with the goal of not finding the perfect person right away, but to find somebody I can go on a date with, just growing my comfort zone, getting out of that trot that I was in, to never going out, meeting people one-on-one, to just become more sociable. And as I'll do that, I will become more and more comfortable talking to people, dating people, and just putting my true self out there, because I want to find somebody who truly resonates with who I am, that I can just be with without having to pretend, and that we just amplify each other's awesomeness. And that's what I want. So I wasn't looking for one night stands or anything like that. And I did that for 1.5 years. And over 1.5 years, this just compounded. And I realized more and more how awesome I am actually at so many things, including now talking to random females, first on the internet and then on actual dates in and around Paris. And I knew at that point, yeah, it's only a numbers game until I find my perfect fit, until I find the woman I want to spend the rest of my life with. And that's how it happened in the end. Like, then I reached out to Severine, is the name of my wife, reached out to Severine on OkCupid because she had like the cutest smile and was like so full of love and life that I needed to reach out and tell her like, oh, like, sorry, I know it's like a cheesy line or whatever, but I just love your smile. I needed to reach out. How are you doing? Or something like that. And she's like, oh yeah, I saw your photo. And I was hugging my favorite board game, Gloomhaven, and also had the biggest smile on the face. And she's like, yeah, right back at you. Like, your smile is intoxicating. And then we just started talking and talking and talking. And then at one point, at the same time, we asked each other online, hey, how about we meet tomorrow? And at this point, I knew, damn, I found her. Like, we are so in sync. It's insane. And I only got there by being kind to myself, accepting who I am and not trying to hide my flaws, being present that it will take time. And I need to build my future self up first, and being open to do that over the duration of 1.5 years. And it took that amount of time, and that's fine. And as I went to the first date, I already visualized like having the best time and just talking about Wacken and gaming and awesome videos that I've seen recently, and just seeing her smile in front of me. And again, that's exactly what happened. I could just be myself, and she resonated so well with it that I knew even before the first date, like, that's it, that's her, this is going to work out. And like, big part of that was this positive visualization. But then what's even more important in the end is the actions that you put out there. So being yourself and being all in with what you're about, and that is what worked for me. And sorry, I'm hearing my wife in the background. Okay, I think she might be on the phone.
Well, I thought she was complaining that you mistold the story, or she was approving that it was correct.
Either way, you summoned her.
Yeah. Also, there's no camera, honey, if you want to come through the room. So, okay. No, but yeah, that's the story of, how I met and married the love of my life. And now a kid is on the way, and I couldn't be happier. And again, I wouldn't change anything in my past, because it made me the person who I am today, meeting the person that I met. and building a life together, and I wouldn't want to change that for the world.
What a wholesome episode.
Yeah, kind of, right?
Very nice. So great. Everything is scaffolding for love. It's very good. That's what it's about. Speaking of which, we have, what are they called again? I think they're called soft questions. Oh no, they're actually called essential questions.
Indeed they are.
Little joke because soft skills, essential skills, anyway, guys. Okay, fine. Yeah, and we can do a little quick fire round. You're invited to be quick, but if you can't be quick, that's fine as well. And it's our show closer. So are you ready for this?
Sure, let's do it.
It starts very simply. What is the purpose of your being?
The purpose of my being, to me, is really equipping exposing as many people as I can to be as kind, present, and open as they can be, and transmitting that to as many people as they like in their life. As down the line, I believe in my heart and my head, this is the one best thing I can do, not only for myself and my close loved ones, but everybody else as well.
What inspires you?
What inspires me? I think in the past, it was a lot my family members, and especially my oldest brother, who just gets stuff done and is very intelligent and very self-driven and self-directed and creating the lives that he wants to have and live. And that was very, very, very inspiring and still is to this day. And outside of that, just humans that I happen to come across and I say, oh wow, like they have this remarkable skill set. Like a friend of mine is one of the best storytellers that I know, and just these seemingly random experiences that show me that everybody has value and potential and expresses that in a different form, I find very reinvigorating and assuring and inspiring.
What is a beautiful day to you?
A beautiful day to me definitely has some board games in it. with my loved ones, with my wife, with my friends, just achieving something fun together, having a good time, with other humans. And I think in the future probably this will change once I meet our offspring, and she will definitely be part of that. But yeah, if she's not going to be a board gamer, that's like the biggest disappointment of my life. So yeah, like having this family group of shared experiences where we don't need to go out, we don't need to visit fancy places. We still may, and it's still great when it happens, but we don't need that to have a happy and fulfilled life. I think that's where my heart beats. Yeah.
Very nice. What is the change you want to see in the world?
Be more kind, present, and open with one another. Everything else falls into place after that.
How do you contribute to that?
Yeah, I think we talked about that already. Like that being my purpose for being kinder. And at the moment, I'm contributing it through this podcast as I'm exposing all your awesome listeners to these ideas and concepts. And maybe some of them want to talk more about it. I do it through my practice as a coach and leadership trainer. And in the future, who knows? It might be learning and development in a specific company or at a university. I don't know. Like that's exciting part again. There's so many forms for that passion to express itself in. I'm really enjoying the journey I'm on right now, having my own company and doing that, but can also see a future where I do it again in a more structured way with a specific company or institution to do it more long-term for a more concise group of people.
If you would start a new save game in your life right now, what occupation would your new character have?
So I'm saying for the moment I'm really happy with it, but I have been thinking, like, if I had to change, I think I would love to have a safe slot in academia where we can build these mindset structure and tools in young people before they hit the job market. I think that is a very interesting space to explore. Definitely something I would love to do more with once I find a way that this also compensates me with money so I can keep doing it. I think that's the one biggest thing I would love to be doing alternatively to what I'm doing right now.
Very nice. Makes me think as well. I do like university. Last question from me. Do you have books that you often recommend or that changed your life that you like to give to people? You're invited to give a top 3.
What was it? Mindfulness, A Practical Guide to Finding Peace in a Frantic World. A very good book that I like because it kind of teaches you how to be present with yourself, which is the second step in the framework. So that I find really, really good. The Power of Habit and Atomic Habits. So I actually haven't read Atomic Habits. I only read the recaps and YouTube videos, but those two are kind of neck on neck for me when it comes to gaining value in the being open to do stuff part through systems and habits. So those two I can strongly recommend. So, but I would recommend them as one because they are about the same thing, basically, but different expressions of it. And then Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind, I found absolutely amazing. Like, I loved it. It just makes so much sense and helps you understand the world and the dynamics of the world so much better. Again, for this being present with how everything else works outside of us, Sapiens is really good. Yes, those would be my 3 to 4 recommendations.
Nice. Sticking to the listings, what are your favorite games? Also a top 3.
Okay, so right now, Duolingo.
All right.
I do count it as a game. I play it every day.
Yeah.
World of Warcraft, I have to put in there. I've played it for 10 years, basically exclusively. So it needs to be in there. And then there's a whole bunch of others. I think I need to put a turn-based game in there because I love turn-based games. Oh, but that's tough. Like right now I'm playing Battletech again, which I also played in co-op with my brother. Like you could have remote control together, how it's called on Steam. It's not actually a multiplayer game. But like games like that, or Baldur's Gate as well, XCOM, all these games where ideally in co-op you have a squad of ideally mechs that you can pimp and make better, and you have this turn-based strategy aspect to it. Yeah, all of those are my third place.
Nice. Who's somebody from the games industry who you would like to get to know?
So actually, Mark Garvey from your last episode, I felt overly underprepared. Like, I have to follow him. So I hope he's at Gamescom. Like we connected on LinkedIn, but he's not. I think he was overseas when we connected, so I'm not sure he's back and how often he checks LinkedIn. So Simon, I need your help to make yourself and Garvey come to Gamescom so nice. I can actually meet him. That would be super awesome.
I'm coming.
That's the purpose also of the question. And in this case, it could actually happen next week because next week is already Gamescom, which tells people when we are recording this episode. Who is someone who you think we should have on this podcast?
So I think would be very interesting. It's not necessarily gaming, but they have a very interesting coming of age story and are very, very good at what they do for a very long time. And that's Maurice Whelan, one of the people I work with. And he just has such a wide area of insights when it comes to leadership development, but also personal stories and how he got to where he is today, that I think would be very interesting to have on the show as well. But not gaming oriented. That would be more like philosophy and story time, and yeah.
All right. And our last final question, where can people find you?
Ideally, most easily on LinkedIn, Benedikt Oehmen. I believe I'm the only Benedikt Oehmen on LinkedIn. And then if you can leave a link to I have a website, of course, and on that website, I have a page with the book on it because it's free. You can take a look at it. And it also has the recording of the workshop that Simon, you were referring to, for people who want to go through these steps a little bit guided and have additional resources there. So that is tiny.cc/big-3-goodies. The 3 and the goodies are all capitalized at the beginning. It's important for the link to work. And so tiny.cc, big-3-goodies, that's where you find all that material and can learn more about what I do, how I do it. And if you want to talk to me afterwards, before or during, do not hesitate to give me a poke on LinkedIn, write me an email at oehmenbenedikt@gmail.com, or go to my Calendly linked on the webpage as well to just arrange a call for us to meet and chat and get to know each other.
All right. We will put the link in the show notes as well.
Perfect. Awesome.
Thank you so much, Benedikt, for this amazing and wholesome episode.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And it only took us 2 hours. We are so efficient. And yes, thank you guys so much to also share from your point of view and your experiences. I found it super interesting. And yeah, definitely had a lot of fun just being kind, present, and open with all of you. And hopefully your listeners find it enjoyable. So thank you very much and have a good one.
See you next week at Gamescom.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.